Candaces of Meroe were the African queens of the Kingdom of Kush, who ruled from the city of Meroe-c 284 BCE to 314 CE. Most of them ruled independently 170 BCE to 314 CE in what is now Sudan. The title Candace is the Latinized version of the term Kentake or Kandake in Meroitic and may mean Queen Regent or Queen Mother, but could also mean Royal Woman. Although the term seems to have originally referred to the mother of the king, from around c. 170 BCE, it was also used to designate a female monarch who reigned independently. The African queens making up the Candaces of Meroe were the following: Kandake, 170 BCE, Ergamenes, 40 to 10 BCE, Kandake, 10 BCE to 1 CE, Amanitore, 1C to 25 CE, Amantitere, 25C to 41 CE, Amanikatashan, 62C to 85 CE, Malekorobar, 266C to 283 CE, Lahidiamani, 306C to 314 CE. A Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, is mentioned in the Bible when the Apostle Philip meets a eunuch of great authority under her reign and converts him to Christianity. Acts 8:27-39. In this passage, as in other ancient works mentioning the Candace, the royal title has often been confused with a personal name. Prior to 284 BCE, kings ruled Kush from Meroe, but the king Ergamenes, also known as Arkamani-Thaftheh, 295 to 275 BCE, instituted a number of reforms, and among these seems to be the elevation of royal women to the position of queen. The title Kentake appears prior to Ergamenes' reign, but there is no evidence of women reigning alongside a king, only of a royal woman who was the king's mother. Following his reign, however, the title often refers to a female monarch. Male rulers follow Ergamenes in succession and seem to have had queens who co-ruled or exerted significant influence. But the Queen Candace Kandake, 170 BCE, reigned independently, and so did a number of women after her. Meroe flourished as the capital of the Kingdom of Kush between 750 BCE to 350 CE and became legendary as a city of fabulous wealth. Located on the Nile in the region of modern-day Sudan, Meroe grew rich from trade and its ironworks. With an abundant of grain supply ensured a steady production of goods wanted and needed by others. But it was the monarchy, periodically controlled by women, that established and maintained the trade which encouraged such affluence. Meroe was originally an administrative centre south of the Kushite capital city of Napata. In 590 BCE, Napata was sacked by the Egyptian king Psammetichus II, 595 to 589 BCE, and the capital was moved to Meroe. Napata had been heavily influenced by Egyptian culture and religion, as the entire Kingdom of Kush was initially, due to close contact through trade and Egypt's repeated military campaigns in the region. This same paradigm was held to at Meroe, where official documents were written in Egyptian. The gods who appeared in the temples were Egyptian. Art was created in Egyptian styles. Kings were depicted as Egyptian pharaohs, and their tombs were pyramids. The city was already thriving before it became the capital of Kush, but afterwards, its wealth would become legendary. Large fields yielded abundant crops, which were easily transported up and down the nearby Nile in trade. Hunters stalked prey such as leopards and elephants, whose skins and tusks were then traded upriver to Egypt. The principal industry, however, was ironworking, and Meroitic tools and weapons became highly sought after and commanded a high price. The kings of the city regulated trade, and it is possible that they followed a model similar to Egypt's, in which taxes and money from trade went to the government, which then provided resources to the people. The iron industry boomed not only because of the expert craftsmen in the city, but also the abundant natural resources of the enormous forests surrounding Meroe. Wood was required for the furnaces to smelt the iron, and also in the production of charcoal, and these furnaces burned hot on a daily basis. When Ergamenes came to the throne in 295 BCE, Meroe had already been prospering for centuries, but his reforms would only improve upon the city's success. According to the historian Diodorus Siculus, 1st century BCE, Ergamenes had studied Greek philosophy and was not inclined to blindly follow the religious traditions of his people. Among these traditions was the practice of the priests of Amun choosing the monarch, setting a span for that monarch's reign, and deciding when the king should die for the good of the people and make way for a successor. The cult of Amun had been a powerful political force in Egypt for millennia and exerted the same kind of influence over the kings of Kush. At Napata, in fact, the Egyptian pharaoh Thutmose III, 1458 to 1425 BCE, built the Temple of Amun, which would become the most important religious site in the kingdom for centuries. As in Egypt, the priesthood seems to have been tax-exempt, and so were able to accrue significant wealth and influence. Ergamenes broke the priests' power through direct action, not legislation, by arriving at the temple at Napata with an armed force and slaughtering them all. He then discarded the tradition of the priesthood's influence over the king, though maintaining the cult of Amun, and initiated further reforms to distance Meroe from Egyptian influence. The gods, though still bearing some evidence of Egyptian culture, begin to appear as indigenous deities during his reign. Pyramids take on a uniquely Meroitic style of architecture. Kings and their queens appear in Meroitic attire, and the art of the period shifts away from Egyptian to a distinctly indigenous style. Most importantly, Egyptian hieroglyphics disappear during Ergamenes' reign to be replaced by Meroitic script. This reform is significant because this script has not yet been deciphered and, because of this, the history of the latter centuries of the Kingdom of Kush is obscured. It is clear that Kush had armies, but very little is known about their organization. There was obviously a strong central government, but daily administrative practices and even the process of succession are unclear. Trade flourished, but precisely how it was conducted is unknown. The names of the rulers of Meroe and their probable reigns were pieced together by the archaeologist George A. Reisner, 1867 to 1942 CE, who excavated Napata and Meroe and whose conclusions are still accepted for the most part, but even so, there are gaps and contradictions in his narrative which could only be resolved by a written history of the culture. It is this lack of such a history that makes a discussion of the Candaces of Meroe so challenging. It appears that the practice in Meroe was that evidence suggests continuing tension between the throne and temple and possibly between successors, but no consensus can be reached on its interpretation. It may be that the erasure of names and destruction of certain monuments was due to conflict in dynastic succession or to the priests trying to reassert their power, but just as easily may not have anything to do with either. It is also unknown exactly how much influence a queen in Meroe had prior to Ergamenes' reign. All that is known for certain is that after his reign, some female rulers wielded considerable power and Meroe flourished accordingly. Kandake, 170 BCE. The first queen to rule independently was Kandake, also given as Kandake, who appears in battle dress leading her armies. Under her reign, Meroe expanded its borders, and the economy boomed. She may have performed a religious political function along the lines of the position of God's wife Ovi. Amun in Egypt, the female counterpart to the high priest of Amun. Her adherence to Egyptian traditions is evident in her inscriptions, where she refers to herself as Son of Ra, Lord of the Two Lands, Beloved of Ma'at, which is a common Egyptian design. She is depicted with a young man, clearly a crown prince, who may be her successor Tanyidamani. Dates unclear. But this is speculation. It is also unclear whether Tanyidamani even was her successor. Amenishakato, 10 BCE to 1 CE. Little is known of Amenishakato outside of her lavish grave goods of ornate jewelry. Her tomb was among the many in Meroe, broken into and destroyed by the notorious treasure hunter Giuseppe Ferlini, 1797 to 1870 CE, who had no interest in history or preservation and was only seeking gold and artifacts he could sell for a high price. Ruined inscriptions and reliefs from her tomb show her as a powerful queen who ruled independently, but details of her reign have been lost. Amanitore, 1c to 25 CE. Amanitore reigned over the most prosperous period of Meroe's history. She was able to rebuild the Temple of Amun at Napata and renovated the large temple to the god in Meroe. Trade was at its height, as evidenced by grave goods and other artifacts from the period, and the iron industry and agriculture flourished, as attested to by the amount of waste slag and improved irrigation canals dug during this time. She is depicted with her co-ruler, King Natakamani, but it is unclear if he was her husband or son, and it seems she reigned alone later. She is depicted on her temple wall at Naka, conquering her enemies as a warrior queen. She may be the Candace referenced in Acts 8:27 of the Bible, but this is contested. It is more likely that Queen was Amantitere, 25 to 41 CE. Amantitere is the queen most often identified as the Candace in Acts 8:27. It has been suggested that she may have been Jewish only based on the passage in the Bible in which her eunuch, encountered by the Apostle Philip, is reading the book of Isaiah. There is no evidence in Meroe itself which supports the existence of a Jewish community, but such communities did exist throughout Kush in small numbers. The biblical passage has also been cited to prove that Amantitere ruled alone, since it states her eunuch had great authority and was in charge. Nothing is known of her reign, but physical evidence from the period shows a high degree of affluence. Amenikatashan, 62 to 85 CE. Nothing is known of her reign except for the military aid she provided to Rome during the First Jewish-Roman War of 66-73 CE. She sent Kushite cavalry, but most likely also sent archers, since the Kushite archers were legendary for their skill. One of the early Egyptian names for the region of Kush, in fact, was Tarseti, the land of the bow, for this reason. Nothing else is known of her reign, but, like other later Candaces, she was most likely associated with the Egyptian goddess Nut as a high priestess. Nut was the sky goddess who personified the canopy of the heavens and was mother to the primary deities Osiris, Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus, the Elder. Although Egyptian script fell out of use during Ergamenes' reign, Egyptian gods such as Amun, Nut, and others continued to be venerated. It is possible, though far from clear, that Amanikatashan would have served as the most powerful religious figure in Meroe as priestess of Nut. Amanirenas, 40 to 10 BCE. Amanirenas is best known as the queen who won favourable terms from Augustus Caesar, 27 BCE to 14 CE, following the conflict known as the Meroitic War, 27 to 22 BCE, between Kush and Rome. The war began in response to Kushite raiding parties making incursions into Roman Egypt. Rome had annexed Egypt as a province following the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, and it quickly became one of the new empire's most critical territories as it supplied Rome with an abundance of grain. The Roman prefect of Egypt, Gaius Petronius, responded to the raids by invading Kush around 22 BCE and destroying the city of Napata. Amanirenas was in no way cowed and retaliated with further aggression. She is depicted as a courageous queen, blind in one eye, and a skilled negotiator. The one-eyed African queen that defeated the Roman Empire. The legendary Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus was on the Greek island of Samos, preparing for an important expedition to Syria, when he received envoys from the Kingdom of Kush, in present-day Sudan. The Candace sends you these arrows. Candace was the Latinized spelling of Kandake, the Kushite term for queen. They added that the emperor had two options for how to view the offering. If you want peace, They are a token of her warmth and friendship. If you want war, you will need them. For an African queen to give such an ultimatum to the most powerful man in the world would have been considered a serious insult. After all, Augustus had almost single-handedly transformed Rome from a republic to an empire, and the territory he now reigned over stretched from as far as northern Spain, through to parts of Central Europe, and all the way to Egypt. His legions wore bronze breastplates and wielded spears, swords and javelins, all much superior to the hatchets the Kushites carried as weapons. In addition, Kush had many natural resources, such as gold mines, iron and ivory, that could have enriched the treasuries of Rome, enticing Augustus to attack, even without the insult. But this Kushite queen, whom the Greek geographer and historian Strabo of Amasia described as a masculine sort of woman and blind in one eye, had proved to be a formidable foe for the Son of God, the title given to Caesar Augustus on Roman coins. He received the bundle of arrows from the envoys and promptly signed a peace treaty. In truth, this was not so much a treaty as it was a surrender. Augustus submitted to all of the demands made by Queen Amanirenas, including that the Romans withdraw from all Kushite territories they had occupied and pledged that they would never again seek to collect taxes or tributes from her kingdom. It was a remarkable concession for the world's most powerful man, demonstrating just how feared and respected the one-eyed queen truly was. Kush was part of a region below Egypt known as Nubia. It was a place where, unlike most of the world at the time, women exercised significant control. In the Nubian Valley, worship of the queen of all goddesses, Isis, was paramount, and Nubia had several female rulers during its history. Queen Amanirenas reigned over Nubia from 40 BC to 10 BC. Her throne was in the city of Meroe, and from there, she and her husband, King Teretekas, presided over the wealthy kingdom. Janice Cameron, curator of Egyptian art at the Metropolitan Museum, writes that, based on its position as an intermediary between the Mediterranean world and sub-Saharan Africa, Nubia was a key transit point for luxury goods such as ivory and exotic objects. Of great importance was gold, a commodity found in the Nubian deserts and greatly prized by the Egyptians. To satisfy the demands of their luxury-loving populace, the Egyptians highly depended on trade with Meroe, which Queen Amanirenas controlled. Her labyrinthine palace, with massive brick-vaulted rooms lined with gold leaf, was a warehouse stocked with great blocks of gold and ivory tusks. She bartered her treasures for goods from Egypt, including cloth, corn, bronze bowls, and glassware. But 10 years into the reign of Amanirenas, the political landscape changed when Augustus seized control of Egypt from the grasp of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. He proclaimed himself emperor and established Egypt as a Roman province. He was now on Queen Amanirenas' doorstep. Before leaving Egypt to continue his quest to seize more territories, Augustus appointed a military colleague named Gaius Cornelius Gallus, a Roman poet and knight whom he had a close relationship with, giving him the title of Praefectus Alexandriae et Aegypti, prefect of Alexandria and Egypt. Only a year after the conquest, the Egyptians in the south rebelled against Roman rule, causing Cornelius to lead his forces south to repress the dissidents. After regaining order, he crossed into Amanirenas' Nubia and laid claim to the island of Philae. He brought a local ruler there under Roman control, and in return for paying homage to Rome, he gave this dynast the powerful title of Tyrannus, tyrant. As a sign of intimidation and also his ego, Cornelius had his achievements inscribed on a large stone tablet that was erected in Philae. To publicize his fame, he listed the victories in Latin, Greek, and hieroglyphic Egyptian. The monument, dated 16th April the 29th BC, read in part, Gaius Cornelius Gallus, son of Gaius, the Roman cavalryman, first prefect of Alexandria and Egypt after the defeat of kings by Caesar, son of the divine and the vanquisher of Thebaid's revolution in 15 days. Queen Amanirenas reluctantly accepted the annexation of a part of her kingdom. Recognizing the military supremacy of the Roman legions, she saw that it was not time to fight yet. Instead, she watched the enemy's moves closely. Soon after, the Nubians in the annexed regions started complaining about the tyrannus. On the orders of Cornelius, he was imposing increased taxes on the traders who brought goods to the frontier and claiming tax rights over autonomous Nubian communities allied to Kush. Cornelius, for his part, continued to celebrate his exploits with grandiose monuments. Roman historian Cassius Dio, who lived from 155 to 235 AD, described how he set up images of himself practically everywhere in Egypt and inscribed a list of his achievements, even upon the very pyramids. These extravagances were not looked upon kindly back in Rome, where the standard directive was to glorify the emperor, not his underlings. Cassius added that Cornelius indulged in a great deal of disrespectful gossip about Augustus and was guilty of many reprehensible actions besides. Suffice it to say, he was on the outs with Emperor Augustus, who ultimately disenfranchised Cornelius and issued many indictments against him. The Roman Senate unanimously voted that he should be convicted in the courts, exiled, and deprived of his estate. Overwhelmed by his bleak prospects, Cornelius killed himself before the decrees took effect. Both during and after the time of Cornelius, the massive Roman Empire kept expanding. This growing footprint made it difficult for Augustus to keep tabs on all corners of his kingdom at the same time, something Queen Amanirenas paid close attention to. In 26 BC, Emperor Augustus appointed Aelius Gallus, another Roman knight, as the next prefect of Egypt. Gallus had hardly settled in when the emperor commanded him to undertake a military expedition to Arabia. 3 complete legions, approximately 15,000 troops in all, had been posted in Egypt to secure the province, but at Augustus's command, many were transferred to Arabia to help in securing this newly sought territory. This presented Queen Amanirenas with an opportunity to challenge Rome's power. While the Roman troops were being removed from Egypt, Queen Amanirenas marshaled her army to liberate her people up north from Roman authority. Together with King Kentake, they commanded an army of 30,000 warriors from Kush, marching along the mudflats of the Nile and into Egypt. Historian Cassius Dio narrates in Roman history that the Meroitic army advanced as far as the city called Elephantine, with Candace as their leader ravaging everything they encountered. They took the entire Triacontashoinos region, including Syene, Philae and Elephantine, a terrain of 200 square miles. Strabo adds that in these cities the Kushites enslaved the inhabitants and threw down the statues of Caesar. They then retreated south with loot, Roman prisoners, and thousands of Egyptian captives. As a last insult, they chopped and carried away the head of a statue of Augustus. Upon arriving back home in Meroe, Queen Amanirenas took the bronze head, with its neatly disarrayed hair, protuberant ears, and startling open eyes of coloured glass, and buried it beneath the entryway steps of a temple dedicated to the god Amun. In burying the head, the Meroites ensured that everyone who entered the building would trample this image of the Emperor Augustus beneath their feet, ritually perpetuating their victory over the Romans. It was the Queen's daily reminder that she had triumphed over the most powerful man in the world. The Kushite victory did not last long. When the news reached Alexandria, the acting governor Gaius Petronius set out with a cavalry of 800, plus 10,000 Roman infantry. By then, the Kushite army had withdrawn to the city of Selkis. Petronius pursued them, sending envoys ahead to demand the return of the captives. But the envoys were confused. They found that there was no leader in command of the warriors. By this, they meant no male leader. King Teritechus had died suddenly of sickness or injury, and they simply could not comprehend that a queen alone ruled the Kushites. Yet Kush did have a leader, and she was not done fighting yet. The queen's warriors, having assembled at Selchis, came forward to battle, each carrying a large oblong shield made of raw ox hide and armed with an array of axes, pikes and swords. They outnumbered the Romans by almost 3-1, but Strabo reported that they were poorly marshalled and badly armed, compared with the heavily armoured, well-drilled legionary ranks. The Romans drove them into retreat, and many of the Kushite warriors fled back to the city or into the desert. Some warriors escaped the battlefield by wading out into the Nile. They hoped to make a stand at a defensive position on a small island, but the Romans secured rafts and boats to capture the island and take them prisoner. This time, the emboldened Romans invaded much deeper into Kushite territory than before. Petronius also captured some of Queen Amanirenas' generals, whom he questioned about their leadership structure. They told him that the Kandake was the ruler in their kingdom, but they also distracted his attention with tales of a male leader. The generals informed Petronius that Akinidad, son of Queen Amanirenas, was based in the northern city of Napata, their ancient capital and holy city, which housed important temples and royal cemeteries. Unbeknownst to Petronius, this was a ruse, as the Kushite rulers had deliberately left Napata hundreds of years earlier. Petronius confidently marched to Napata, sure that victory there would subdue the Kushites for good. He found that Prince Akinidad was in fact not there, and that the actual capital, Meroe, was still more than 330 miles south. Angered at being misled, he burned the city and rounded up its occupants for transport back to Egypt as slaves. But the queen's ruse had worked. Petronius had marched so far and now did not have the capacity to unleash his army on the kingdom's true ruler. He had already travelled more than 570 miles from Syene, a distance almost as long as the entire length of Egypt. Strabo wrote that Petronius decided that the regions beyond would be difficult to traverse. Cassius Dio added that there was no advantage to be gained by remaining where he was with his entire force, so he withdrew, taking the greater part of the army with him. But Queen Amanirenas and her forces did not share his sense of exhaustion. She counterattacked with vigour, fiercely pursuing the retreating Romans back to the fortified hilltop city of Primis. The queen herself was a fearsome presence on the battlefield. Her masculine character, as Strabo described her, referred to her commanding presence as a war leader. She towered above her troops, sporting 3 facial scars on her cheeks. Up until this point, Queen Amanirenas and her troops had been fighting a defensive war aimed at keeping the Romans from permanently annexing any part of her kingdom. But after the destruction of Napata and the death of Prince Akinidad, they went on the attack. Over the next 2 years, she fought with all she had to offer. Her fearlessness even forced the admiration of Strabo, who said, "This queen has a courage above that of her gender." In 22 BC, she marshalled a second force of thousands of Kushite fighters and marched towards the Roman troops who had set up camp in Primis, now the border of the Roman Empire. It was a face-off of epic proportions. Based on the geography of Primis, it is nearly certain that the Kushite warriors entirely surrounded Petronius and his men. However, the Romans had a large array of ballista, ancient cannons that, although less deadly than military weapons today, could still fire deadly darts over long distances. This made a frontal assault by Queen Amanirenas nearly impossible. She would have lost countless warriors. Yet Petronius was surrounded and had no way to escape. A stalemate. Petronius was extremely eager for a ceasefire. Since becoming prefect of Egypt, Queen Amanirenas had untiringly engaged him in war, not giving him a moment's peace to officiate his administrative duties of supervising tax levies. or even enough time to take part in the celebratory festivals, chariot races, and hunting parties that the more leisurely nobles in Alexandria enjoyed. And now he was trapped in a hilltop city with seemingly no way out. Realizing there was no way forward, Petronius urged Queen Amanirenas to meet with Emperor Augustus himself and settle matters. The Meroe warriors offered a prideful response. They claimed in jest that they did not know who the Caesar was or where they could find him. Petronius, surely not appreciating the joke, but eager to escape his current predicament, responded by giving them escorts to the Greek island of Samos, where the emperor was preparing for an expedition to Syria. Dr. Robert Stephen Bianchi, a renowned Egyptologist, writes in Daily Life of the Nubians that this is believed to be the first recorded instance in the entire history of Africa when diplomats representing a black African ruler independent of Egypt traveled to Europe to effect a diplomatic resolution. By sending her envoys and not going personally, Amanirenas showed herself to be superior to the emperor and Rome. She would not deign to travel hundreds of miles just to negotiate. She had people who could do that for her. And the one-eyed queen indeed emerged victorious. The 5-year war had cost the Romans many men and lots of money. A continued war with the tenacious queen Amanirenas was not high on the imperial agenda. At the Treaty of Samos in 21 BC, Caesar Augustus declared Kush to be sovereign and remitted all claims of tribute. Roman troops evacuated Primus and also ceded the areas in the southern portion of the 30-mile strip to the Kushites. They pulled back to Dodekashoinos, which was established as the new border. Along with his signature on the official treaty, as one more step to appease the Nubian people, Augustus directed his administrators to collaborate with regional priests on the enlargement of a temple at Kalabsha, as well as the erection of another at Dendur. The Kushite forces lent no such fealty to the Roman idols. As the emperor's troops withdrew, the queen's fighters toppled the statues of Augustus that had been placed in the occupied towns. While the war had been long and bloody, the Kushites were now free. Queen Amanirenas spared her people centuries of domination by withstanding conquest. Unlike so many other kingdoms across Europe, Africa, and Asia, she neither ceded her territory nor paid any tribute to Rome. Her kingdom was hers, and hers alone. After the Roman war, Amanirenas dedicated herself to rebuilding the kingdom and making life better for her people. She spent the next 11 years of her reign in peace, an era that was one of the most prosperous times of Kushite history, often referred to as the kingdom's golden age. She never remarried. She died in 10 BC and is buried in Jebel Barkal, Sudan. The Kushites commemorated her with a wall painting in a pyramid chapel at Meroe that portrays her holding a bow, arrows, and a spear tethered to a group of 7 Roman captives. The story of Queen Amanirenas is a powerful testament to one woman's fighting spirit, but it's also a testament to just how long people have been overlooked and underestimated because of gender, race, and disability. In this case, underestimated at her enemy's peril.
Special thanks to you, the viewers. Without you, this channel would not be possible. And due to heavy censorship on this part of the internet, please show your support by pledging or donating $1 or whatever you can to help this channel grow. Here at theblackAwakening.com, we pride ourselves in bringing you the truth. We are not colonized nor monetized. So be informed, not influenced. I would like to personally thank each and every one of you for your support.
So I'm going to leave you in the manner in which I came, with a universal prayer. In the name of the universal creator of heaven and earth and everything in between, please continue to bless my listeners, their family, their friends, and the true believers for when the day of reckoning takes place. For universal creator, you are all wise and all knowing. and unto you we all shall return. But until then, we give you the praise and glory that's due to you from this life into the hereafter. In the name of the universal creator of heaven and earth and everything in between, in your name we pray that this shall be done.
Also, family, get yourself a copy of the Black Universal Creators 100 Laws, Morals, and Precepts. The paperback's available on Amazon, ebooks on Kindle. And for my subscribers and my supporters, you can go to theblackawaken.com and get your discount on ebooks. Again, like and share, reach one, teach one, peace, and take care.